Saturday nights used to mean something to us. A little wine, the hum of old playlists in the background, and whatever show we pretended not to binge. That night started no differently. On the surface, she had curled up on the far end of the couch, glass in hand, gaze drifting somewhere past the television. I was scrolling half-interestedly through a feed I barely cared about, trying to unwind after a rough week. She cleared her throat once, twice, like rehearsing the line in her head. Then it came. "I think I've found something. With someone." I looked up. Her tone had this odd steadiness to it, like she'd practiced saying that out loud. I set my phone down, heart tapping a little faster, but my voice came out calm. "What kind of something?" "Luke," she said softly, almost sheepishly. "The guy from marketing." A few seconds passed. I tried to recall every mention of a Luke, some tall guy with a Tesla and a lunchtime smoothie habit, always stopping by her desk, apparently just to chat. My stomach flipped. She didn't hesitate long before continuing. "It's not what you think," she said, which, of course, was precisely what people say when it's exactly what you think. "We haven't crossed any lines, but we've been talking a lot. It's just easy with him. I feel this spark. Something new." I nodded slowly, swallowing the questions piling up behind my lips. "And what does that mean for us?" Her eyes met mine for the first time since she started talking. "I need to see if what I feel with him is real. I'm considering a trial run. A month, maybe less. Just to be sure." She said it as if she were asking for a weekend trip, not pressing pause on a marriage. I didn't speak. I watched the way she twisted the stem of her wine glass, fingers elegant and precise. "I'll come back if I realize this. Us is home," she said. "But I have to explore it. I need clarity." "And you expect me to wait here," I said, "while you go test drive someone else?" Her shoulders lifted in a shrug so slight it barely registered. "I'm not asking for your permission. I'm just being honest." I studied her face. That wasn't guilt I saw. It was resolved. She had made this decision long before this conversation began. I had already been written out of the next 30 days of her life. She leaned forward. "No drama, okay?" A pause stretched between us. Then I smiled. "I wish you clarity," I said. And as I said it, I slid my hand into my hoodie pocket and hit record on my phone. In our state, I only needed one-party consent. Her voice came through clearly, calm, confident, and devastating. She smiled back, maybe relieved. Perhaps I thought I was going to be one of those guys who stayed hopeful and docile. The kind she could return to with a faint apology and a hug that said, "Thanks for waiting." After that, she started rambling about logistics. What clothes would she pack? When she'd be back to grab her laptop? How she'd keep the door open between us? I nodded, watching her lips move without really hearing the words. Later that night, she fell asleep easily. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe like nothing had changed. I opened my laptop. Title the document, "Freedom Begins Now." I started my checklist. First, I would open a new payroll account, redirect my direct deposit away from our joint one. She wouldn't notice for a couple of pay cycles. That would buy me time. Next, I grabbed my phone and walked through the house, snapping high-resolution photos of everything: electronics, furniture, artwork, even the kitchen appliances. Joint property, documented. Then, I booked an appointment with a family lawyer. Monday at noon. I didn't feel broken. Not anymore. The earlier shock had faded into something sharper. Focus. There was no space for arguments, no room for begging. She wanted an experiment? I would make my own decisions, too. In a marriage, there's a moment when the illusion dies. Sometimes it comes slowly, years of drift and silence. Other times, it arrives like this, cloaked in wine and a half-smile, dropped into your lap like a grenade with the pin already pulled. She said she needed to find herself. I intended to find my freedom. And when the 30 days were up, she might return to the same address, but she would not find the same man. She left just after noon on Sunday. No tears, just the soft roll of her suitcase wheels down the hallway and a clipped "see you soon" at the door, as if this were some temporary business trip. Her perfume lingered longer than her presence. I watched through the window as she climbed into a rideshare, head bowed, probably texting Luke. Her exit wasn't rushed. In her mind, everything was unfolding as planned. She had her month to explore. What she hadn't considered was that I had started my own exploration, one into boundaries, truth, and silence that spoke louder than confrontation ever could. As the car pulled away, I walked straight to the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and locked down the rest of the plan. First task, change online banking access. I reset passwords for both our joint account and all financial apps. From now on, everything would flow into the new payroll account I had opened the previous night. I rerouted every bill in my name to the new card attached to it. Utility bills, subscriptions, even our grocery rewards accounts. Quite severe. No notice required. Her credit card, the one linked to my profile, was instantly declined. I stared at the confirmation screen for a moment, almost amused. She'd discover that changed the next time she tried to order brunch or split a cab fare with Luke, because any adult making autonomous choices should be able to finance them. Next came the documentation. I compiled the photos I had taken of our home into a digital folder, categorized by room, timestamped, backed up to 3 different drives. Physical inventory wouldn't lie. If she ever claimed she left anything behind, I had the evidence. By late evening, I drafted a timeline of the past 3 months. Luke hadn't entered her orbit overnight. His name had surfaced here and there, faint mentions, little slips that only seemed innocent at the time. But something in my gut always flinched when she spoke about him. I hadn't been wrong. I just hadn't been ready to see it clearly. Monday came faster than I expected. At noon, I walked into a high-rise office in downtown St. Louis, where the receptionist at a law firm handed me a clipboard. 10 minutes later, I sat across from a family law attorney who didn't offer small talk. She reviewed my notes and timeline silently before speaking. "You're in Missouri," she said. "Adultery is grounds for an at-fault divorce here. But we'll need clean documentation, dates, financial records, and any evidence showing a shift in the relationship that predated her move." I slid a flash drive across the desk. Bank records, screenshots of her texts, social posts she thought I couldn't see. She plugged it into her computer, clicked through a few files, then nodded. "Good start. We'll subpoena phone records and conduct a deeper investigation into the financials. We'll also need to identify where she's staying." "She's with him," I replied. "Luke, condo off Forest Park Avenue." "Then that makes service easier," she said. "And we'll address marital waste as well. If she spent joint funds on him, you may be entitled to reimbursement before division of assets is even calculated." That word, reimbursement, landed heavier than expected. I hadn't just been betrayed emotionally. There were receipts, tangible ways she had diverted the resources of our shared life into a fantasy she expected to test drive and return from, unscathed. When I got home, I logged into our joint bank portal and began pulling PDF statements. The paper trail told a clearer story than any confrontation ever could. Dinner charges, 2 entrees and wine for work meetings in the middle of the week. Boutique hotel stays are billed under general names, but a quick reverse search confirmed my suspicions. These weren't conference centers or business lounges. They were polished rooms booked by the hour or by the weekend, months before she voiced her need for clarity. I saved each file under a label named date. Vendor. Proof of waste. Each transaction screamed intention, forethought. This hadn't been a passing crush. She had rehearsed the idea of leaving long before the conversation happened. She just didn't think I'd see the signs or act before she could control the narrative. That night, I changed the locks. Our home had been purchased 2 years before the wedding, my name alone on the deed. The lawyer confirmed I had every right to protect the space. I installed a Ring Smart camera over the front porch and synced it to my phone. Added one above the garage for good measure. The passwords to both were new, secure, and unshared. I walked through the house again, more slowly this time. There was no sadness, only clarity. The bedroom, still with her side untouched. The guest room was perfectly made up. The bathroom counter was empty of her essentials. This was what solitude looked like when it wasn't forced, when it was chosen. I sat on the edge of the bed, back straight, hands folded. I had no intention of playing victim. She had her experiment. I had my foundation. And I'd already begun building a version of my life that didn't include waiting for someone who considered fidelity optional and my loyalty a guarantee. Day 10. Mid-morning sun cut through the blinds as I waited inside the lobby of a notary's office. I wasn't early, but I wasn't rushing either. Everything I had to do today had already been scheduled, aligned, and confirmed. Just another set of steps in a plan that was quickly becoming muscle memory. The receptionist called my name. In the next 15 minutes, I signed and notarized changes to every primary account that previously named her as my beneficiary: retirement, life insurance, company stock options, all redirected to my sister. There was no emotional struggle, just a pen, a signature, and a quiet acknowledgement that the future she had casually stepped out of now moved forward without her. I stepped out into the parking lot and called the attorney's office. The case was ready. Missouri recognized adultery and abandonment as valid legal grounds. With everything we documented, screenshots, statements, even a timeline showing her expenses linked directly to Luke, we had a foundation for an at-fault divorce. My lawyer had already drafted the complaint and the motion for temporary orders, which included a freeze on all shared funds, exclusive use of the home, and limits on contact unless facilitated through counsel. That afternoon, I reviewed the final version before signing off on it. It read like the obituary of our marriage. Count 1, voluntary abandonment of the marital home. Count 2, marital waste, spending of shared funds on a non-spouse. Count 3, fault grounds, infidelity, supported by financial records and correspondence. The judge issued a standing order the same day. Neither of us could touch joint money. The house, which I owned solely, remained under my control. She wouldn't be able to claim occupancy or re-enter without a court order. The next step was service. We scheduled it for the following morning. I wanted it clean, no late-night screaming, no shouting matches at my doorstep. The process server coordinated with a retired police officer and the concierge of Luke's building. It would be handled with absolute precision, just like she had claimed her trial run would be. Day 16, 9 a.m. Process server texted, delivered, witnesses present. She signed the receipt. I sat in my office and stared at the screen for a long moment. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't filled with rage, just a sense of deep resolve. The wheel had turned. She chose an experiment. I built a consequence. By noon, my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. I stared at it for several rings before answering. "I don't understand," she said. Her voice, once composed and confident, now trembled slightly. "Why would you file something so serious?" I said I'd come back. There it was, that presumptive certainty. The idea that she could throw the marriage into a holding pattern while she explored desire with another man, and I would just wait in limbo, ready to resume as though her detour was a blip. As though my dignity had a pause button. "I did a little experiment too," I replied. "Mine ended in a divorce." She fumbled for words. "It wasn't real, it was just time to think. You knew I was coming back. You smiled. You said." I meant every word. I cut in. And I also meant what I signed. "This isn't temporary for me." Then came the phrase she probably rehearsed in the mirror. "We can fix this. We've built too much to let it go like this. Please." It wasn't rage that came next. It was calm. "Speak to my attorney. Her number is in the documents you received." I ended the call. In the days that followed, she reached out several more times. Emails, voicemails, even a message through a mutual friend. She blamed the timing, the stress of her job, and the emotional weight of routine. She said she felt lost, confused, caught between what felt exciting and what felt like responsibility. But she never once called it what it truly was. A choice. Every transaction she made behind my back. Every glance across the table at Luke. Every delayed text. Every unexplained night out. Every lie coded in, "It's complicated." None of it was confusion. It was selection. And now I had selected my path too. At night, the house was quiet. The cameras showed only me entering and leaving. There were no shadows where trust used to live, no wondering whether my world would collapse while I slept. My space reflected only what I allowed into it. What she hadn't understood, what most people like her never grasped, was that silence could be a sword. A steady, surgical blade sharper than anger, cleaner than bitterness. Her trial run was over. Mine had only just begun. Day 25. Late afternoon lights spilled across the pavement as a silver sedan pulled up to the driveway. I watched through the front-facing camera feed on my phone. Her figure emerged from the passenger side, alone this time. No suitcase, just a leather tote slung over her shoulder, and the same soft gray cardigan she used to wear around the house. She hesitated at the porch steps, stared at the door, then reached into her bag for the key. The lock didn't turn. She tried again, same result. Her expression shifted, confusion edged with disbelief. She glanced around, as if expecting someone to appear and explain the malfunction. The moment dragged. Then her eyes fell to the envelope taped neatly above the mailbox. Inside, contact information for my attorney. Cleanly typed. Nothing more. She pulled out her phone. A minute later, my screen lit up. Her message came in. Seriously? I saw the 3 typing dots blink and vanish twice. She didn't follow up. I didn't reply. The silence stretched overnight. In the morning, she sent a single email to my attorney's office, a request to meet, in good faith, for mediation. Week 10. We met at a neutral divorce settlement center. Fluorescent lights, pale furniture, and the kind of sterile air you only find in conference rooms designed to broker endings. She looked thinner, tired. The confidence she once wore like armor had begun to fracture at its edges. She avoided my eyes as we sat down. Her lawyer started. They acknowledged the spending, called it marital misjudgment, a clinical phrase designed to avoid admitting what really happened. They offered to reimburse the funds spent on hotel stays, meals, and shared excursions. The total figure wasn't small. She scribbled a quick signature beside each item without hesitation. My attorney spoke next. We had proposed a 70/30th division of joint savings, reflecting both the marital waste and the preemptive control of assets. There were no objections. Then came the issue of the house. Her counsel cleared their throat. Client wishes to propose equitable buyout options to preserve potential occupancy. I didn't move. My attorney slid forward a document, a copy of the original deed, which I had purchased solely in my name years before the marriage. The room stilled. Her lawyer glanced at her. She barely nodded. They dropped the claim. The conversation moved quickly from there. Retirement funds, vehicles, and remaining shared items. Each topic was ticked off like a business transaction. When the mediator closed her folder and offered a calm, "You'll each receive a finalized decree within 30 days, she finally spoke. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. I didn't think it would go like this. I met her eyes for the first time that day. There was something in them now. Reflection? Regret? Maybe both. But the timing had always been her issue. Always a second too late. A beat behind the consequences she never believed would come. You thought you had more time? I said evenly. She gave a weak nod. She waited until the lawyers stood before speaking again. Was I really that easy to replace? I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. I simply answered. You replaced yourself. She blinked slowly, the words landing heavier than she'd expected. As we walked out of the building, she lagged behind. Her footsteps echoed off the sterile tile floors. I didn't look back. There was nothing left to carry. That night, the house was as it had been. Quiet, uncluttered mine. I sat at the kitchen table and reread a printed copy of her original message, the one from the night she told me about Luke. She had said, "If I realize you're my home, I'll come back." I had never asked her to define home. I understood it now. It was peace. And she hadn't lived here in a long time. 3 months later, the decree was finalized. She stood in the center of the living room we once shared, though it now looked unfamiliar. The furniture had changed. The photos were gone. Even the scent of the place had shifted, cooler, sharper, more minimal. She turned slowly, hands in her coat pockets, scanning what remained. Nothing looked the same as it had when we were together. It was clear she'd come by to feel something, connection, maybe memory, but the walls didn't return the favor. She paused where the coffee table used to sit, a spot that once held wine glasses and shared laughter. Now it held emptiness, a vacuum of her design. I had arranged to be out that afternoon. She requested 10 minutes alone. My attorney cleared it under the terms of mediation. No appeals, just a quiet visit before the final door closed. As I stepped out that morning, I left a single envelope on the hallway table. It wasn't bitter. No scathing letter or farewell message, just the final divorce documents, cleanly printed and clipped with a pen. One signature space remaining. She found it when she walked in and recognized the neat handwriting on the folder. Her name, my initials. Below it, the last page, waiting. She read slowly, but her hand didn't tremble. She signed. That was the end. Outside, the wind cut through the trees with a slow rhythm, as if nature itself acknowledged the shift. No witnesses, just the final punctuation mark at the end of a long sentence that once resembled love. After she left, I returned. The house welcomed me, as it always had in her absence. But this time, something lingered in the air. Release, an unclenching of everything I'd held in for months. I poured a cup of coffee, leaned against the kitchen counter, and stared out the window as evening light bent across the yard. This wasn't about winning. It was about truth. For a long time, I replayed our last year together, looking for signs, clues that could explain her detachment. In reality, they were always there. The delayed replies, the distant eyes, the way she stopped making small talk in the mornings. She had begun building a new life in the shadows while pretending the old one could serve as a safety net. What she never accounted for was what would happen when the safety net disappeared. The day she left for her trial, she believed she had the power to return whenever she wished, that forgiveness would be waiting like an open door. She saw herself as the explorer and I as the harbor. But I had learned something far more helpful. Anchors don't need rescuing. Harbors can seal their gates. She looked for passion. I found peace. 2 days after the final signing, she sent a single message. Do you think, in time, we could ever talk again? I stared at it for a long moment before closing the thread. There was nothing more to say. The version of her who might have deserved that conversation existed in another life. This version, the one who gambled with commitment, who treated fidelity like an optional vow, had no place here anymore. Later that night, my sister came by. She brought dinner, laughed at old stories, and filled the house with warmth that wasn't tied to obligation. When she asked if I felt different, I simply nodded. Yes, different, lighter. There's something powerful about rebuilding without apology, about waking up in a space untouched by betrayal, filled only with choices you made deliberately. I wasn't someone's backup plan anymore or a placeholder for indecision. I was the architect of my silence. And when I lay down that night, alone, but never lonely, I realized something that wrapped around me like armor. Closure isn't given. It's built, brick by silent brick.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.